Continuing our coverage of the African Development Bank meetings in Morocco, attendees remain largely positive about Africa and its development. CNBC Africa's Godfrey Mutizwa spoke to Anne Grant, she's the Vice Chairman of Standard Chartered, about those sentiments.
Well, we wouldn't miss an African Development Bank AGM as Standard Chartered. We always come because it's a great place to take the temperature, to feel the mood, both from investors and from people outside the continent, but of course from our partners, governments, policymakers, investors, clients and partners in Africa.
Sure.
And I think I can say we've only had 2 days, but I think I can already say the mood is very optimistic. Not unrealistic, but optimistic.
Too optimistic, would you say?
I don't think so. I think that there are genuine grounds for optimism, and there's a lot of hype, a lot of nonsense talked, I think, as there is whenever there's a new story, which I think Africa is for a lot of people around the world. But I think in Standard Chartered we've been in Africa for 150 years.
Sure.
I think our breadth and our depth of knowledge of individual markets is very strong. Most of my colleagues, 90% of my colleagues in Africa are African from the countries where we work.
Sure.
So they know the score. They know where the genuine opportunities are as opposed to the hype.
So Anne, that temperature, is it hot? Is it lukewarm? Is it cold? Where is it?
I think it's warm and boiling up. That's my feeling. Is not only is the current situation completely transformed. If you think of the 1990s, 90 to 2000, wasn't a good decade. Wasn't a good decade for Africa, objectively as well as in terms of maybe exaggeration from the outside.
Sure.
But if you look at the statistics from 2000 onwards, that picture's really turned around. And it's turned around for good fundamental reasons.
Sure.
Because of, I think, improved economic management across the board, a generation where military solutions were less and less common, although they still persist in some areas. There's much less fighting in the continent as a whole, not to minimize where it is still happening. You've got new demands from Asia, especially from China, but also from India and other parts of Asia growing fast. So they need the resources that Africa has. But I think what we've seen is it's much more than a resources story. The growth has been across the board. It's a growth of a middle class, a new generation of people who want the same things that people want all over the world.
Is that reflected in your customer base? What kind of customer base are you seeing?
It certainly is. I mean, we've always had customers in the governments where we work, and the large local corporates, and of course the multinational companies, you know, your Unilevers and others that have invested in the continent. But now we're seeing especially a strong interest from our Indian and Chinese customers in a whole range of sectors. You know, from the consumer base, in banks where we have a big consumer bank, which is 16 of the African countries where we have business. We are seeing far more people investing in their own country, investing in their own businesses, people coming back, for example, to Ghana from abroad. But we're seeing a new generation of customers who are staying around, who are interested in buying things that they wouldn't have been able to afford a generation ago.
So you're saying you're seeing a mixture of new money, old money, and also in terms of, if you look at the countries that have traditionally done business with Africa, new money again, in particularly in terms of the East, as well as the old money also staying in from old Europe.
Indeed, old Europe, and also, for example, the US, where they traditionally would have invested in their own economy or in their region. For the first time, they're looking around and thinking, well, with risk having changed in the rest of the world, Africa's looking very different from what it did 10 years ago.
So, as Standard Chartered, what are you guys doing? What's the approach? Is this to put in more bricks and mortar around the continent and more countries, or are you looking to partner and come in with locals?
We're certainly growing our business and, for example, increasing the size of our branch network all over Africa. We've got a particular effort and a focus on Nigeria, which is one of our longest and best performing businesses, but we think we can do a lot more in Nigeria. But Ghana is doing extremely well. We're growing also in Kenya. At the moment we're growing primarily on our own base, organically, as you would say.
Sure.
And we always we're looking all over the world for acquisitions that make sense, that fit with our ambition and fit with our footprint. We like to think we work where we know what we're doing and where we have a model that works. So we don't exclude, but we are primarily very happily building on the business we have at the moment and growing our customer base, diversifying the kind of customers we have and lending in general, and bringing in new investors from the rest of our footprint, because you know we're very big in Asia and the Middle East as well.
Absolutely. So, as you say, there are parts that are growing strongly. There are parts that are also struggling. What to do about places like Zimbabwe? Will you pull out? You've been there a long time, haven't you? Given the issues that have been raised there.
I think we've put a lot of faith in Zimbabwe, in our customers and in our staff, and we've held faith with them. I think, for personally speaking, I'm confident that our decision to stay will be the right one, will be proved to be the right one. And I think Zimbabwe is a great country. And when the opportunities expand, we want to be there to partner that new expansion.